Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and we'll go around the table and start Mr. Flynn and do roll call, or introduce yourself.
Patrick Fletcher.
Ernie Hall.
Bill Evans.
L.V. Gray Jackson.
Dick Training.
Tim Steele.
Oh, Zig Burzen. Dean Barnes.
Michael Proxell.
Dave Colton.
Kate Geyer.
Thank you. And I think that we're going to hear from our contractor first.
Yep.
Okay, you're on.
Good morning. My name is Zig Burzen. I'm the managing principal of Zico Consulting. My contract's basically a two-stage contract. The first piece is finished. That was an assessment that I presented 2 weeks ago. And we're now getting into the ongoing, phase 2 of our agreement, whereby I basically spend a week up here once a month and take a look at what's going on and report back to you. And so, what the approach is that basically I'm just going to kind of provide a verbal summary, if you will, and then there is a supporting document that I'll get out to you afterward. So I'll try to kind of go through that. I want to kind of remind everybody what contractually I'm supposed to be doing on these monthly walkthroughs. I'm supposed to do a critical review and assessment of the progress of the project. Definitely kind of follow up on the status of those phase 1 assessment results. In other words, all those recommendations that we made, we need to find out how we're doing on those. We need to look at how risks are being mitigated. And then kind of take a review of the budget and the costs, if you will, of the project as we go forward. And then also do an ongoing critical review of the team performance, including the contractors. So those are in essence, the assignments. With regard to progress, I mean, the project team is now is into very definitely a revitalized, replanning mode, if you will. And there are several, I think, a couple of kind of key changes that we need to recognize, and that is that there is a decision has been made that you're going to consolidate your timekeeping systems into a single solution. That represents an increase in scope to the actual Synergy project. So that's a fairly major change. And then the other thing I think that's happened is everybody has agreed that we do need to upgrade the software. That also is kind of an addition, if you will, to the activities and create some dependencies as you're going to go forward. So you just have to recognize that that's going to be a little bit new in terms of addition to the actual effort and the planning of that project. So in terms of the actual response that the team put together on our recommendations, we had a total of 120 recommendations. Virtually all of them were agreed to. I was very pleased about that. There were 11 items that the organization disagreed with, and which had to do with some things like the renaming of the functional steering committee and things like that. The responses right now are all focused on here's where all of this information is going to be, here's how we're going to address some of these recommendations. And so that's basically, I'm going to start now literally getting those documents as they do that, because a lot of the things have to do with the way the program is going to be managed, and so that's in essence a policy procedures type of document. The program schedule documentation is, again, how do we go about taking care of the actual detailed project plans. Certainly we need to look at the detailed project plans which need to be developed, and that's what's going to be going on over the next X period with the project managers. And there needs to be an overall project plan, which one of the recommendations is to say have multiple project plans and roll them in together to a master. So we've got to get that done. And I think you're going to see an updated organization chart. So some of the comments that we had and suggestions with regard to the organization, of course, are going to be reflected in that organization chart. In terms of risks, certainly it's not been very long since we've did the assessment, so really don't have any new risks that we've identified. But we wanted to highlight a couple of them for you that we think are important enough to bring up. One of the items we mentioned to you is whatever you do, don't open Pandora's box again. Don't reopen your design. Don't start going back. into history. And if you do, your entire project is going to grind to a slow halt, probably. So there's a high risk of that happening, and the mitigation is that the team has resolved that instead of going back into history on the requirements, is to focus on as-built. And I don't know if you remember, that was one of the recommendations, is to focus on documenting the way things are configured. And that's your base point, and that's what the team is doing. So that's a good thing. In terms of some early, we talked about some early successes. So right now the team is trying to figure out what might be some reasonable chunks, if you will, of the project that can be made available so that the super users can actually start using the system. But it would be before any data is converted. It would be before anything is fully integration tested and so forth. But it would be of some things that could be done earlier in the project rather than waiting years. And so the mitigation is that you should only focus in on the ones that SAP told you were low risk. So those are the ones that were green. Okay. So in terms of the budget, we took a look at, we presented to you kind of a summary of 12/31 unaudited, and we now have January 31 numbers, and so we basically posted those in there in terms of the what your spending to date is. The bottom line is, as of 1/31, your operating spending has reached its budgetary limit, give or take $1,000 or so. Capital spending is virtually fully encumbered. There's very little budget now left for your internal resources as of 1/31. Okay, and then most of your capital spending is for your contractors, no surprise there. But basically, most of the spending for those contractors is going to run its course by the end of March. So you are faced with some decisions and some contract renegotiations and so forth as you come up on all this. And then we will continue to look at this on a monthly basis and review that expenditure budget. It may continue to be 1 month in arrears, but maybe we'll get some more timely information. We'll see how that works. Team performance. An awful lot of the folks, are basically have gone back to their shops, if you will. But the project managers have been very active over the last couple of weeks. But we do need to realize it's transitioning. Those project managers, several of them have less than 1 month of experience with the project. They're relatively new. But there has, some of the meetings that I've observed, there has been some confusion about who's in charge, and then there's some confusion about, well, who's providing us with our SAP knowledge transfer? Who are the experts we should be turning to? And just simply saying it's not clear. There's some confusion there. And there's some confusion as to the responsibilities of the system integrator, and that's Peloton. There's also some, misalignment in terms of the program manager's responsibilities, accountability, and authority. So these are all transitioning kinds of activities and things that are going on as everybody is, reshuffling over the last couple of weeks and probably for the next couple of weeks going forward. Bottom line, the synergy budget is rapidly reaching its limits, and the PM group needs to coalesce. They need to get on with project planning. It's kind of a fire drill over the last couple of weeks, responding to the audits. And no surprise there. Specifically, we talked to a couple, the PMs about, can you or can you not work remotely? Because quite a few of them are basically contractors who are coming into town. And they're very comfortable with being able to work remotely as long as there's someone else that can be there physically that represents them. So whether that's a co-project manager or a deputy or something along those lines, but it does make sense, to have someone focusing on each particular project manager's responsibility area on site. The other thing we got into and discussed was, a lot of those contracts today limit their time. I understand the reasons for limiting time with regard to contracts. I certainly do. But when you start talking about project manager folks who are doing an awful lot of planning and organizing, leading and guiding, they need to focus on, we got to do what we've got to do to get the job done. And if it calls for them, and if they need to put in a few extra hours, it makes sense that they should be able to do that. Certainly, Muni should do the approvals. I mean, of course, you should have that in there, so they don't go arbitrarily, if you will, putting in extra hours. But we do think that you need to, rework your contract, especially with your PMs, so that they can put in those extra hours if necessary. On that note, are there any questions?
Thank you. You had a question, Mr. Training?
You said upgrade software is going to be required. Do we have to upgrade the hardware too, from your estimate?
I can't really make a statement with regard to the quality and capacity of the existing
I'll ask
hardware.
the rest
Okay,
then.
so I have not looked at that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Okay.
Mr. Training. The administration is next, I'm assuming.
Okay, and then I will be back in 4 weeks. Okay,
Thank you.
Good flight.
thank you.
What are we doing just for me to sit this way already?
Come close.
Glenda, could you do the, okay, good. So it's been very helpful to have Zick here for the past week. His observations are being incorporated into our plans. And I think that it's good to always have that external view. Say, go, look, make sure you're doing this right. So it's we're working to incorporate him as much as possible when he's here into our activities, so he gets a real view and a real-time view of what's going on.
Can somebody dim the lights, please? Thank you. Thank you.
So what we would like to talk to you about today is our strategy for going forward. And that is that we have, as Sig noted, we've been head down trying to go through this comprehensive design audit and respond on a timely basis. And we have achieved that. We have responded, and those responses are incorporated. The responses that we have are incorporated throughout the document. And also for your information, we thought if you wanted a little more concise view, we put the Excel spreadsheets that everyone worked from in the very back. So you wouldn't have to really pin through, and they're identified by item section. So if you open your books, if you have them, there's 70 pages of Excel spreadsheets. Those are what everyone worked from when they were going through this very significant document. So those are a kind of a synopsis of all the questions. And then if you wanted to read more about the findings, you could always refer back to the section that's in the document. We thought that would be the most effective way of giving us a document that would be living and something that you would find more usable than having to thumb through and find your sections that you wanted to look at. To a degree, we've responded to a few of the items that were presented to you in the SAP QA presentation, but we didn't want to go through that rather long list that they went through, so we've highlighted some key items. Zig spoke to you about the time consolidation effort, which is, I think, very important and SAP believed was critical to the overall success and stability of the project. So we will answer that one. We also are setting out, and we'll meet with you a little bit later. We need a little bit of time in March. Now that we're kind of done with this effort, we need a little time in March to get a strategy laid out for the planning strategy of this. But we're identifying stages. And we have, right now, we have a planning period. And the planning period is March, April. And then we have what we call revitalization. Revitalization is April through probably June, and then implementation, which is May through, right now, ongoing. So that will go through the end of the project. So we're going to more clearly define these periods of time, but we wanted to let you know that we see these three primary stages that we'll be reporting to you on: planning, revitalization, and implementation. The planning stage is going to be where we take these QA recommendations, which primarily and initially focused on our blueprint. So rather than go back, Zig cautioned us, and everyone has cautioned us about going back and trying to redo a blueprint. We're going to do something that the project management team came up with called a blueprint as built. So where do we stand today as the system is configured? There's very little documentation as to how that system is configured. So we're going to go through and we're going to blueprint an as-built, and that'll be what the system is configured and understand what that is. Then we're going to create the functional and specifications that support that current configuration. At the same time, and these are happening in various modules at various periods of time, we are going to begin the process of identifying the change matters that happen as a result of the QA. QA was for an accountant, the QA was a balance sheet as of a particular date. And now it says you have to make these changes. In order to control that change process, we're going to incorporate them through a change control documentation methodology. And that will have an estimate of hours of each item that they say we should make a modification to. And that's our basic mechanism for planning how many hours we think the overall project will take. So it's a methodical and time-consuming process that I believe will provide you with the ability to actually schedule and rely on the tasks that are incorporated into that schedule, which then will give you the hours and the dollars of the whole implementation. So that's our planning phase, and why our planning phase, extends into a couple different months, because it takes time. We also have out going on the street. This is like a stream of consciousness, what goes on in my mind on this planning. We have going on the street. We talked to you earlier about having our local community more involved in this. Most of the money from this, or a lot of it, because it's SAP, those resources aren't in town. We have to go outside, and our money goes outside. But there are specific segments of this project that can be sourced inside Alaska. So we have an ITV going out when purchasing says it's ready to request only local vendors respond, and we're going to get a pool of business analysts. Those are people that are technical writers that will help us do this writing effort that we're about ready to launch into. So hopefully I've talked to a lot of local IT service providers, asking them, please consider getting involved in this project, and they're waiting for that ITV to be out into the market. So that's a pool of business analysts. Initially, it's about a $220,000 effort, and that's where we spent some of that $500,000 that you gave us the other day. And the remaining money that we have there is going to be spent on our time consolidation effort. So this is the reason that our project managers have been coalesced together in room 711 downstairs for the last couple of weeks, because the amount of planning that it takes to ensure you and the mayor and the executive steering committee that we are writing and on a very good track for this project is deep. It's deep and wide. And we appreciate that Zig is going to be looking over us and ensuring that we do that to the best of our ability, because the best we plan, the best we'll be able to implement. Next slide. And this morning I decided this is our motto, and the mayor said it was okay. Plan, revitalize, implement, and get her done. So that's what we're going to do. I had a lot of other things down here other than get her done, but the mayor didn't want me to put those in there. So I'm going to stand if you don't mind. I don't want to take too much of your time on this today. So what we're trying to do also is focus your attention on these little green boxes. These green boxes are our gate checks. So when SAP was here, they talked about a gate check. And Zig himself, just by being Zig, is a gate check, right? He's a gate check almost every single month on this project for you to say, how are they doing? That's a gate check. As we move forward through this process, we're going to have external companies come in, SAP very likely, and do a gate check. Okay, so we think we're done with our blueprint as built, gate check. We think we're done with, our, well, it's not here, but we think we've done with any other major decision, infrastructure, right? We're gonna have a gate check. Are we doing the infrastructure that needs to be upgraded correctly? Gate check. So these little green bars will be something that you'll see in a more detailed plan, and it is in our overall budget too. We don't know how much a gate check costs yet, because we've yet to define all of them. But to me, they're the most important thing that we have here, because they give the assurance to the mayor and to the assembly that we're on the right path, and they'll tell us where we've deviated from the path. Time consolidation, I think you probably heard about it a lot. It's a very important aspect of this implementation, and the mayor has given us direction that we are to move on this immediately. A lot of people talk about Kronos and think of Kronos as, a challenged system. Kronos is really critical to, it's a critical front end, like, I'll try to explain that. It's a critical front end that's needed for SAP. SAP doesn't have a time entry system associated with it. It goes to a third party like Kronos to get those. So Kronos is an integral part of this SAP implementation. But we had Kronos MLMP is different from Kronos Anchorage, and then Telestaff and Kronos Interface for the police and fire. And then we have WorkTech Time for AWW. Those are systems that collect time. And if we can, every time we have a system that collects time, we have to build interfaces and maintain them. So as we think of the ongoing future costs of the SAP system, as we can simplify now, we need to, because it's going to cost you a lot less in terms of ongoing owner maintenance. Because if Kronos has to be upgraded to MLP, you have to upgrade that interface. You have to fool around with SAP. This way, we're going to have one time collection system that gathers the time and then brings it into SAP.
Hold on a second, Mr. Trainee.
Okay, is our version of Kronos compatible with our version of SAP? Because I asked the SAP people and they said you have to ask the Kronos people. So is the version of Kronos we have compatible with our version of SAP?
Kronos, I can answer you in this way. There are 2 upgrades from where we are right now in Kronos.
Okay.
Part of this effort will be looking at that upgrade path and whether we need to do that upgrade path. MLNP has created an interface between its Kronos, which is on the same system that Anchorage is on, and it's built those interfaces. So I would answer your question, yes. I would also say that we're looking at the user interface on the most recent Kronos is far improved from the user interface that's there now, and it also adjusts some Java security issues. So that's all going into this big effort of time consolidation.
Because I'm going to be asking that question every time we deal with this issue. So I want to make sure we've got the timekeeping system that SAP doesn't have. You said we have to use Kronos. I want to make sure we've got the latest version of Kronos.
I understand, sir. We're also, the mayor has also given us a policy direction that we are going to take SAP's advice and we are going to do time evaluation in SAP. Time evaluation, as the project previously was scheduled, was to occur both in Kronos and in SAP. So that was a highly complex system, which was the best that we knew at the time, and we did the best job to configure it appropriately. Their recommendation is time evaluation in SAP, time collection in Kronos. So Kronos will collect time, feed it, and SAP will evaluate the time. That way you have less risk in your project when you have evaluation occurring in one place.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Okay, upgrade. Many people have asked us about the upgrade. We are evaluating our upgrade alternatives right now. We are asking, again, we are going to gate check any plan that we have with SAP to determine what is the most efficient and effective way of doing the upgrade. It is, our project managers let us know it's very challenging to upgrade and develop at the same time. But it's possible, it may be possible for SAP to do our upgrade in the background while we continue to develop and then bring them together. That adds an increment of cost, but it also allows us to continue to move forward on this project. So we don't have a decision, we're not offering you a solution. The mayor has asked us to investigate how we can do this and get it done most effectively, and we'll bring that information back to the mayor and to you. Next slide. So Zig has helped us develop and more refine our project structure. I've been talking to you about project organization since I came in September, but we haven't finalized it because we're adding people to the project, and we wanted the project manager team, which is not yet completely built, to be able to have some influence over how they set this up. So we just wanted to give you a sense that they're working on this and that you will see very detailed. Is there another slide after this?
Not in here.
Not in here. Can you pull up the other one? Would you mind? Again, I don't want to take too much of your time, but so I do want to introduce you to some of the most recent project managers that we have on our team, and they are preparing. So there's like the executive steering committee, the functional steering committee, the assembly, and the mayor. But then there's the PMO, the project management office, and all of these project managers that each are responsible for particular segments of this effort. So 3 of them are here with you today. First is Paul Cotton.
Good morning.
When did you start?
I started a whole month ago. And as you can tell, I'm from Far East Texas. So this has really been a great learning curve for me. I'm in charge of, I'm one half of the program managers on Philo, which is finance and logistics. And as Kate is showing there. So the other PM
I feel like
is...
Nana. Do I look like
That looks great,
her?
thank you. The other PM is Bill Wilkes, who I believe most of you know reasonably well. And our task to this date has been to assess what has been produced. And we're in the stage now of determining its relevance going forward, and then to look at where the shortfalls are and to fill those shortfalls.
Mr. Proxel, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, my name is Michael Proxel. I'm actually a local hired here from Anchorage. I'm one half of a PM, or a second PM in the HR role, and the other being Umberto,
Okay, good worker, not a great speaker.
Apologies. I'm nervous.
I'm Dean Barnes, and I'm the technology project manager. I've actually been with them since July, but I've recently filled this role. I was in a slightly different role previous to about a month and a half ago, I guess. So I'm leading the technology side, which is including the upgrades, the development, reporting development, and data management.
And also, we have Gail Turner as our OCM project manager. Gail is a deputy director of IT. We're going to find a project manager full-time. Gail's done the best she could, but she is a deputy director of IT. So that's kind of 3 jobs that she has to do already. And then our time consolidation project manager, Julie Collins. Are you here, Julie? Hi. Julie Collins is going to be the project manager on our time consolidation effort. So we can go back to the slides. As you can, that's right. So let's just go to the next slide. So these are key findings. I think I've already addressed many of them for you. We talked about our 4 different time collection systems, our interfacing of our payroll data. These are items that we've accepted and we are incorporating into our plan, and we can move forward. Time evaluation, the mayor has made this decision that time evaluation will occur within SAP. Organizational management and enterprise structure was identified as a high-risk area. The mayor has decided that we are going to examine enterprise structure and revise it so that it is flexible and fluid for years going forward. So let's see, go to the next slide. Payroll process is part of time. We have a specialist coming in to take a look at our time evaluation process. We'll probably have in total 4 or 5 experts, very costly but very knowledgeable experts that are going to be working on HCM. FERC month end, Ben is going to receive some additional date checks from SAP. We can find out right now the reports that they've been working on don't reconcile. They don't close out by a small dollar amount, but that could be big on one side and big on the other, leading to a small dollar amount. So we'll be doing some more date checks on FERC. Upcoming assembly actions. That's my favorite part.
It's fine.
So I was sick this week primarily because of upcoming assembly actions. Giving me a lot of stress to have to tell you about money. But I do have, we do need to revitalize the program, and that is our intention. So we have prepared for you. You were on the school board. Do you mind taking one and passing it down?
I can do that.
Because people are making me donuts. Yeah, he will need one. He's seen it. He's in concept.
I know that number.
So, this is not a plan, okay, because it's not associated with tasks, right? And we talked to you that we need to go through the planning process. We need to bring on resources to do that planning process. But I was betwixt and between about how to give you a budget for that, because we need to request money, and 2 weeks later, hopefully get approval for money, and then we need to contract. And what I was trying to do in structuring this, and the mayor agreed it was a reasonable plan, was to have a sufficient balance in the borrowing so that we would cross-transition into a new administration. What we don't want to do as an administration is leave the new administration without the security of knowing that the project is funded and ongoing through a period of time. Then if the new administration wants to make any kind of changes, like directional changes, they have the time to become familiar with it and then make those changes. So what we would do is contract with our resources through 9/30, subject to your approval as you go through the contracts, and we would have sufficient funding in place to last through those 3 months or longer, because this is really all just a gross estimate in many ways, so that they would not be left in a bad situation, whoever they may be. So that is the reason that I changed the strategy, which was previously small little incremental funding processes, fund, put it in a month ahead of time, and then contract the next month just for a short period of time. The short periods of time don't give the contractors any sense that they're going to be here in another month. So if we can contract with very highly qualified resources and get them guaranteed in for a set period of time, we're in a better position. People like Lisa Wood are in very high demand. She's the payroll person that we're trying to bring on. John Keith, many Peloton contractors, the solution manager. He wrote a book on solution manager. We had an opportunity to get him, so we locked him in. So that's the reason that you're seeing a very large number. It's the reason I was sick this week, but it's also, I think, provides the most stability to the project, subject to your review and approval or wish and desire to do it a different way. So what we would put down for you is an assembly request introduced on March 3rd to make a borrowing of this size or nature. Of course, we understand that you go to public hearing, and we'll meet again on the 24th, and you'll want us to do a better job giving you what we have at that time, and we will do that, but this is coming forward to you.
Any questions so far, anybody? Mr. Steele?
Why hourly? Why time as opposed to task?
At this moment, because we don't have a task-built schedule, we can't really say, okay, we want you to complete this task in set amount of hours. We lack neither the hours nor the schedule that would support that. So our strategy is, during this period of time, we're on time and materials, and we carefully monitor it. You can see on the back page, we slowed, slowed the burn rate by almost $200,000 on Peloton. Because we're on an hourly basis, we can do that. We can say, nope, we don't need these resources, you're out. But that's the reason.
What I don't want to see, though, is the contractors getting hung up because somebody else hasn't got their work done, and then you're burning up hours, unproductive hours. That's what I don't want to see. And with the complexity, it probably has to be done that way.
Zig recommends that we also follow your suggestion and do it on a task-based basis. And I feel like once we get to identifying those tasks, and I said in our response plan to him that certainly when we get to the implementation stage, then you have a set specific bunch of tasks that you can have them do, and you could revise those contracts accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Trini?
Okay, so as I look at this will take us through 30 September,
This is my best guess.
and we're talking 8.3 million?
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I have a question. So the request for a loan that's going to come before the Assembly on March 3rd, how much is that going to be?
8.3 million.
So it's the entire amount? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Hall?
Yeah, up front, is this a conservative or realistic?
42.
Yes.
Through the chair, I believe it's a realistic yes.
Okay.
And that's why I had Peloton and SAP prepare this in conjunction with me and identify the hours and the resources that they were providing. I didn't create this, I asked them to create this. And then I added $1.2 million on the bottom for local contractors for further VA analysis and other resources that we may have to bring in.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Anybody else? Did you have your hand up?
I did not.
Mr. Flynn?
After September 30, do we have even WAG that we're talking about?
Through the chair, our planning period is March through April. We are going to meet with you on a regular basis, and once we get a totally defined schedule with tasks and hours, we'll be able to give you that number that you're looking for.
So that's a no.
Oh, I don't believe it's a no, sir. I think it's a yes. You'll have it well in advance of September 30th. We would want that information to be very clear prior to any kind of transition.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Please continue.
The other items that may be on the Assembly agenda for March 30th are contracts with Peloton and contracts with SAP to deploy the resources that we need, subject to Assembly approval of the appropriation. So we will bring those contracts forward. And that's all I have for you today.
Well, we have 2 hours, so if you want to talk some more, we got what? Any questions from anybody? Mr. Steele?
One clarification, in terms of those contracts, the contracts, once I get it scoped out, they're within this 8.4 or whatever it is.
Through the chair, Mr. Steele, those contracts are. Things that we do not have in this contract, right, in this numbers are infrastructure, because we're studying that, and the software upgrade, because we're studying that as well. So those are another increment of cost.
Thank you, Mr. Steele. Mr. Hall?
No, Mr.
I'm sorry, Mr. Evans.
People often confuse us.
But twins.
Yeah, you look like twins.
First, you certainly needn't be sick when you're stressed out asking this. I mean, this project is, a problem. Everybody knows it's a problem. I think only thing that this body really wants from the administration is really an honest, straightforward assessment and the cold hard facts about what we need to do. As long as you're doing that, no need to be stressed. Nobody likes the number. it is what it is. I appreciate the administration doing it in this manner, instead of coming to us every 2 weeks for, like you said, I think psychologically it's just better to, bite off that big bullet. We knew, I think, and we know it's going to be a lot more than this before we're done. I'm, encouraged to the extent I think it looks like you're putting in the proper prior planning for this to get it done right. So I think, as encouraging as you can be in this mess, I think you're coming out of the dark parts. And so, we're always obviously going to be looking at this closely at each one of those gates that you've identified. I think the next big step that everybody, at least on this body, probably wants to know, and I'm sure that the public wants to know, and I know you're not in a position to do it yet, but at some point we need to be able to say when this project will be done and what the total cost is going to be. And it sounds like from what you were talking about, that some point after April, when you should be able to have those two answers, and I look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. Not to waste time, but since we have a little bit of time, I have a question. Zig said that he had 120 recommendations and that the administration agreed with all of them, and then he said that you disagreed with 11. Can you tell us what those recommendations are that you disagreed with?
Yes, we
Thank
have
you.
gone through Zico's recommendations. You want to do it again?
Experienced. I'm going to put it on my resume.
Thank you.
We don't have this segregated by disagree, Madam Chair. We didn't disagree with very many of them. We probably disagreed with changing the functional steering committee's name, which I don't think Zig cares about at all. He was just trying to give us some good advice from his perspective.
Well, he did say 11, so
I
yeah.
will find them and we can go over them.
Thank you.
But I do have, they are in here, disagree. It's item number 17 on page 3. It was a perception that Zig had that the utility participation appeared defensive rather than participative, and they're following a parallel project organizational change. I think in part because the utilities have been actively involved in this project from the beginning, our reflection was, and also that the AWWU finance director is the chair of the functional steering committee. That's an unusual way to set this up. Normally we would have a controller be the chair of the functional steering committee because MOA is the greatest user, but we had such turnover that we put the AWWU as chair. So I think that Zig was correct in that AWW utility people were probably going to their chair of the functional steering committee. But as we firm up the functional steering committee, Zig wants the sponsor to be chair. So I think that that will kind of go out in time.
If I can briefly speak to that.
Mr. Flynn?
Linda, thank you for all the hard work you've put in this.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn.
On page 4, item number 22, again, Zig's observation was that the functional steering committee had a granular controlling approach. This was as a result of the functional steering committee itself devoted hundreds of hours to the SAP QA, preparing the group for the SAP QA, and moving it through. So I imagine that they were under my direction to be granular and controlling. And so I don't really think they are granular and controlling. I think they're evolving. So these are my comments, my reflections back.
Mr. Hall? I'm sorry, Mr. Evans. I don't know why I keep calling you Mr. Hall.
That's all right. Could be worse.
It's the glasses.
As long as you don't call me Mr.
It's the glasses.
Maybe you just get between
Split
us.
you up.
I think you missed number 19.
And 20.
Oh, and 20.
I
Did you skip those or just?
I didn't skip
Yeah.
it on purpose.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Evans.
Number 19, the project structure has excessive layers. It's Zig's recommendation that we have a flat group of project managers report up to the PMO. And it is our original proposal that we have project managers kind of grouped like HCM and Philo and then technology. And those are like senior project managers that report up to the PMO because there's so many PMs, we thought it would be too much for one person to oversee. So we introduced structure. Zig didn't think that structure was necessary. We believe it's a more stable way to move forward given the resources that are going to be on the project, so we disagreed with his finding to flatten that out. I don't think he's got too much trouble. I'm sorry I didn't highlight these. Number 45 on page 7. We disagreed with Zig's finding that the project momentum is virtually halted as we have been head down in the SAP QA and the SAP QA response. I think what Zig may have meant is that the development has virtually halted, and he is accurate that if that was his intention, that development on the project when he came here was virtually halted because we were involved in the SAP QA.
I'm sorry, did you address number 22? 20 also, I meant.
Okay, why don't you pick them and I'll just talk about it.
No, you're right, Mr. Evans.
Item number 20.
20.
Project organization chart does not, yes, that's correct. We have advisors right now. SAP has an advisor to us that helps the CFO do activities on the project. We have Peloton advisors right now, and advisors will come and go as we need them. So we didn't put them all on our project organizational chart. The ones that stay, like the advisor to the executive steering committee, we'll throw them on the chart. But what we thought we would do is footnote the advisors so that we could modify them as they, you'll have more advisors early, fewer advisors later. So that's you want me to try to find the next one?
But you did 45 already, right?
Good.
The next one is on page 9, number 63.5.
Right, this is just changing the name of the professional steering committee.
Okay. Next one is on page 11, number 67. 11, number 67.
Right, number 67, this is something that we would be happy to have Zig involved when he's here in the meetings as an observer, and we would be providing him with notes of our meetings as we move forward to all other meetings that occur during the month. I think it's been very helpful to have him here as an observer. I think it's hard to be an observer and not an active participant in those meetings, and I think that will improve and evolve over time.
Why is that a disagree then? It sounds like that's what he's
Well, I
recommending.
think he wanted to be, Zig would prefer to listen in and be an observer in every single meeting that we have. And we just think that that's a little bit too much independent observation.
Question of how much you want to spend, Mr. Evans.
Good point.
Please continue, thank you.
So item number 70 on that same page, I think it was a naming thing.
1375.5.
Again, our strategy would be to have him fully involved while he's here so we can take that picture, and then we'll provide him with complete notes while he's not there.
Page 1589.
Our plan in the first quarter budget revision and our strategy in the revitalization is 100% dedicated MOA staff, and we are going to be putting forward a plan, and I think it's in here somewhere, that we will be using contractor backfill. We have a staff needs assessment that our team leads are looking at right now. Those are the team people that are actually working every day on the project. If they don't like our numbers, they're going to improve them, but in the first quarter budget revision, I think right now we're looking at $500,000 and $800,000 to take us through December for 100% dedicated staff. So we disagree that they can't be. We believe they could be.
Before you move off to that, we're pretty close to the cap. Is this going to be capital funding for these folks or operating?
Through the chair, that would be one-time money. If we have any one-time money, because it's not a recurring type cost.
I'll repeat my question. We're pretty close to the cap. We're talking about operating dollars
Yes,
that
sir.
are under the cap?
Operating dollars that are over the cap, that are fund balance funded, not tax funded. One-time type money is what we would hope to use. We
We'll
wouldn't
discuss
be
that.
able
We'll
to-
discuss that further when we get to that.
Excuse me, I would really appreciate, gentlemen, if you would, go through the chair with your questions. Thank you. You can continue. I think that's it.
Page 17, number one.
Oh, there's one more?
Just repeats.
We addressed this with you, we just disagreed on the structure. I think that's it, and by and large, these were extremely helpful to us. They are the absolute right types of recommendations that we should be acting on. It was very helpful to have him specifically look at project management and to continue to look at project management. It's not always comfortable, because he's doing what you want him to do. Sometimes I don't want him to say those things, but you want him to say those things, and so we want him to say those things.
Thank you. Any other questions from anyone? Mr. Steele?
Yeah, I hope that you end up with a relationship with him such that you consider him a resource as opposed to
We do already.
Yeah.
Any other comments? Well, I would like to personally thank you for the presentation and all the work that's being done behind this project, and I'm just hopeful. Well, this meeting is adjourned.